So on today's show during our lockdown series, I'm joined by the one and only Mr. Larry Lamb. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
One and only, I guess.
I was going to say, it's a crazy time at the moment. So what are you doing to actually keep yourself busy during the lockdown?
One and only, very lonely. I'm down in the country, not so very far from you. I'm staying with family in Herefordshire and well and truly locked away, deep in the countryside on the borders. So look out the window and look at the lambs and the sheep in the fields and the daffodils gradually switching, and it's going to dandelions and bluebells, and seasons roll on. To do. I've got lots of things to do, and I write and I think and I read a lot and I do a bit of helping in the garden, and so I'm certainly not bored, and I don't have a very busy social life in London, so not the worst place in the world to be stuck for a year or two.
Well, I've got to say, I wanted to get back to the very beginning for you in regards to acting, and I wanted to know, was that something that you always loved growing up? Was it something that you knew that was what you wanted to do?
No. I can't tell you how far removed anything like that is from where I was, where I grew up, my life, anything. I was just intent on making some sort of a success of myself, and I couldn't have explained to you what an actor was. I'd relate to the characters in things, but wouldn't really have got it that there were actors doing that. No, not at all. Nothing. No part of my life. It all happened completely by chance. And an American woman said to me, "You should be an actor," and she took me along to a local theatre group where she was working and introduced me to the world that I was eventually going to become a part of. As simple as that. I just got involved with amateur acting and was very lucky and had a fortunate lucky break when I was in my mid-late 20s and took a jump and changed my life, and that was it. So nothing to do with the way I grew up at all.
And what was that lucky break?
Well, then you have to go deeper into the thing. It's just I was working in different parts of the world, and basically I started off away from Britain, working in Germany, then I worked in North Africa, then I worked in America, then I worked in Canada. And while I was in Canada, I was doing amateur theatre there, and somebody told me about the local theatre company were doing auditions for just small part actors. And I decided I'd had enough of doing what I was doing, and went and did an audition, and I got lucky. That was it.
For someone that wasn't planning to do this as a career, you're very good at it, because, I mean, from live theatre to TV, it's something that you just seem to thrive at. But I wanted to ask you, in regards to theatre, obviously when you're performing, every night is live. There's no room for error as such. So do you have a preference in regards to television and theatre?
Well, I don't really do theatre anymore. It's too nerve-wracking because as you get older, you have a tendency to forget things now and again anyway, and forgetting things on stage is sort of a living nightmare. And so that tendency, as you get older, to sort of just forget little things just becomes a very, very scary thing on stage. And, a lot of actors will, as they get older, will tell you the same thing. It's just, when you're not worried about the acting, you're worried about your memory. And your memory is your key functioning part in your whole sort of makeup. If your memory doesn't work properly, you're up the creek. And so you're on stage perfectly happy to be doing what you're doing, but you're just constantly aware of the fact that your memory can let you down. And then you've got to get yourself out of trouble, hopefully without anybody else knowing, and that's pretty scary. And so I always kind of, to me, acting, you've got to be able to enjoy acting. I mean, it took me years to enjoy acting. I just sort of got into it because I sort of liked doing it, and I liked the thought of, one day I'd be a great big superstar or something. So I was sort of flushed with all of that, and then you begin to realise that the the way, the time, the distance between starting off as a sort of a run-of-the-mill beginning actor in the professional theatre, and making your way up to where you become a great actor is a long, long road. And for me, I began to realise that whilst I enjoyed working in the theatre, it was very scary for me. It took me years to get to where I was extremely comfortable on stage. I did in the end. I mean, it took me, as I say, it took me 30 years. But I was always comfortable working in front of a camera, but I wasn't good enough because I hadn't worked hard enough at the stage. Really the natural progression is you learn your craft on stage. You learn that confidence on stage. You learn that ease on stage. And so I was mixing it up because I started late. I was doing a bit of stage and a bit of television and a bit of stage and a bit of television. And I didn't consistently work in the theatre. And if you want to learn how to act, you've got to consistently work in the theatre. Jump out and do a bit of telly every 6 months or so. And, and so I kind of muddled my way through. And as I say, 30 years after starting, I could finally be on stage in the West End in a play, with 1,000 people out there watching and feel completely at ease. But I wasn't a good enough screen actor to make it on screen, So I kind of got a bit of this and a bit of that muddled up together, and in the end was lucky enough to be the right person in the right place at the right time over the course of a career to finish up being able to link it all up and call it a career, because a lot of poor people, they get into it and they never get the chance. They never take off. It's terrible. You get young people go to drama school. They love it. It's their life. They slog away for 3 years and they come out. They can't even get an agent.
And the time, I was going to say, a time that it did kind of set a new level for you was when you starred in EastEnders as Archie Mitchell. It kind of introduced you to a huge audience, with it being one of the biggest shows on TV. Now, it's fair to say Archie Mitchell was a very dark character. So was that something you had to audition for, or did they approach you?
No, when you get to that level of, like going into one of those soap operas, particularly that one at that time when it was really riding high, they don't have auditions. They make decisions at a sort of committee level that, this part is going to be becoming, this character rather, is going to be becoming part of the whole setup of the series. And so they will discuss amongst themselves who they think would be the person to play it. And then they make approaches. That's it. So you go in and you talk to them, and then they decide, that you're the person for the job. And and it's much better if you've done a lot of acting beforehand. It makes it. If you go in, you go in and you've done a lot. When you finally come out, you've got your career to fall back on.
And like you said, rewind, that was 12 years ago. Like you said, the show was as big as it was. So were you excited when you found out that they had this part for you, and the fact it was such a big and complex character to play? Was that something that excited you?
Well, I didn't realise it was so complex when I first got involved. I didn't really understand these complexities until I'd been and met them and we talked about it, and I began to understand just how profoundly strange he was. So, yeah, that was, clearly that made it a lot more interesting.
And I've got to say, for me, it's one of those characters you shouldn't like, because he's just not a nice person at all. However, he became one of TV's biggest villains, and of course involved in one of the show's biggest whodunit storylines with Who Killed Archie. Now, did you ever feel a pressure when you were playing some of those storylines? In regards to, obviously a lot of people have been through abuse, and the character you were playing, with what he was doing to Ronnie, his daughter, and various other storylines. So did you ever feel like you had a responsibility to really play the character and explore it? And did you ever feel pressured in doing that?
To be perfectly honest with you, I think once you've played characters on stage, like, as a shining example, Claudius the king in Hamlet, who's very clearly, it turns out, killed his own brother, playing Archie Mitchell is sort of like small beer. Who's the character? What's he doing? What's he done?
Yeah.
Play the character. It's like you play bad characters, you play good characters. He's, Archie Mitchell was a very sort of disturbed man, like so many people, disturbed people like that. He would have argued until black was white, that there was nothing wrong with him,
And with your on-screen family, what was the relationship like with working with, obviously, Barbara Windsor, Rita Simon, Samantha Womack? Did you all get on really well?
Yeah, really well. Really well, fortunately. Yeah, it's very difficult in those situations if you don't, because the only relief you get when you're doing something heavy like that is that it all becomes a laugh. I mean, it's, quite often hysterically funny. And because, you've got to have that relief. You can't, you can get really involved with it in the moment, but you've got to be able to break out with it, and break out from it. And those three were wonderful.
Talking about a wonderful cast, we've got to talk, of course, of Gavin and Stacey, which has just become one of the finest comedy shows that I think the UK have ever produced. Now, when you first heard about the idea, did you ever anticipate, because you obviously read the scripts before a lot of people, you knew the storyline, so did you kind of have an idea at the time that this was going to be something special and something big?
I was approached about Gavin and Stacey just to go along and do an audition for this new comedy show written by two people I'd never heard of, and something which, I've done comedy before, but not to where I would consider myself a skilled comic actor, particularly on screen. I'm not bad on stage doing comedy, but on screen that's a different thing. So I was asked if I'd go along and audition for it, and I messed up the first audition, but fortunately they wanted me to go back again and do the audition again and do a test there with Alison. And Alison and I had known each other for years, and we'd worked a little bit together before, and so that kind of put me much more at ease. And so in the second audition I pulled it off, and then it wasn't, I think, until we all sat around a table, all the cast, and read it amongst us around the table, that and maybe not everybody else, but I certainly just realised how powerfully funny it was.
And I think for me, what stands out, a lot of, in the show, the characters are so relatable. I mean, I can say that we've all got the eccentric uncle or the auntie that always wants to make you some homemade cakes, like Gwen, and it's just so relatable. But for me, my favourite characters in the show have always been Mick and Pam, because I find Pam and Mick hilarious. It's the overreacting and the Mick's trying to calm her down, and you two just have this wonderful chemistry together. It really is.
But you see, it's the power of the writing. All they did was get us to and fit us to the writing. They didn't fit the writing to us, don't forget. They wrote that. You could have read that and found how wonderful it was without ever seeing an actor play it. And then they got Alison and I, and it worked between Alison and I in those two parts. But strength of what we have to say comes from what they wrote. It's too easy to lose sight of that.
And for me as well, because obviously the show finished and fans, I mean, you would know, you probably did loads of interviews where they're asking, when's there going to be another Gavin and Stacey? Because the show was hugely popular. It was the funniest thing that's been on for years. I'd go as far to say since Only Fools and Horses. Now, fans were asking when there's going to be another episode of the show. And as the years went on, I kind of thought, I'm never going to see another episode of Gavin and Stacey. And then last year, obviously, the news hit that there's going to be a Christmas special. So did you first hear about it? And two, What were your thoughts? Did you ever think this was going to happen? Was it as big a shock to you as it was to the fans?
Well, you know, at the beginning, I think everybody thought, well, we'll probably go on with this because it had been so successful. But, you know, 10 years is a pretty long break, and I'd more or less convinced myself that, you know, for whatever reason, it wasn't ever going to happen again, and that was it. So when people ask me, as they spent 10 years of my life, or I spent 10 years of my life answering the question, I don't know, I don't think so. Suddenly, having convinced myself it wasn't going to happen, I got a call from James Corden one afternoon, and he clearly wasn't calling up from Los Angeles just to have a chat. So once we had our initial sort of exchange of greetings and pleasantries, and it was, you know, I said to him, what's it all about? What are you calling for? And he said, well, look, it looks like there's a chance we might be doing another show, and we'll do a Christmas special. And are you going to be free in July? And I said, well, chance would have it, I am going to be free in July. So that was the first hurdle, and then the next hurdle was hanging on to it and like not saying anything for the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. So it was all a bit of a surprise to be finding that we were doing it again, and certainly, I mean, it was really, I suppose, a really pleasant shock that it came right out of the blue like that.
And going back to seeing your old cast friends and people that you used to work with, what were the relationships like? Was it kind of like it was like you haven't seen each other for a week? Yeah. Did it just fit back in?
Like you're so close when you do those things. It's like any friendship. If you're really friends with somebody and you spend a lot of time with them, and then for whatever reason 10 years goes by and you don't see each other, invariably what happens is you just pick up exactly where you left off, and that's what happens. Oh, we're just carrying on now. We're all a bit older, and we're all hopefully a little bit wiser, and there's more to talk about because we've had our lives and what's happened to us in between. So yeah, it was a wonderful experience, frankly.
Previously, when shows you've had a successful show and they bring it back, it doesn't always work, and there are a lot of kind of people talking, will this live up to the Gavin and Stacey that we all know and love? And I've got to say, I mean, well, the viewing figures speak for itself, but it really did. It was just as funny than anything we've ever seen. And for me, one of my favourite scenes from the Christmas special was Pam and Mick when she was wanting to bring the towels to Gwen's house because she didn't want to use her towel, and she just played it so well. And your reaction to what you're seeing, the Bear Grylls survival kit, the towels that she's wanting to bring, it was just priceless, and it just made the show so exciting. And of course, you're all smoking cannabis as well. It's just absolutely amazing comedy.
I know it was, but as I say, the thing is, as we all sat and read it, because we didn't. They asked us to say yes to doing it without showing us a script. It was a bit of a stretch, but everybody said, yeah, let's get on and do it. And then we all sat around and read this thing, and you just realised just how extraordinarily well done this was. I mean, you know, they managed to do something that was better than I could have ever dreamt it would be. Because if you think you and all the fans were worried about it being as good, you multiply that by about 1,000 when you're going to be up there doing it. Because you set the standard yourself, and the one thing you want to know is that the script you're working on is as good or better than everything you've already done. So we were so well served by the writers, and we had the same director through the whole show right from the beginning, Chris Gernon, and and that's like Chris Gernon is really the unseen other member of the whole family, because she loved that show onto the screen, and literally every millisecond of it is on there because she got it filmed that way. So it's an extraordinary team effort. That's the power of it. It's such a special piece, and everybody that's involved with it just loves it.
I think if you go back to last year, the way the country was at the time in regards to politics, and it was just a bit of an uneasy time. So I found this was the first time in easily 10 years that I looked forward to Christmas Day to watch TV, because it just hasn't been like that for a long time, where you'd be excited that there's something new and exciting, and it was something that people were counting down. 30 days to Gavin and Stacey, 10 days to... It was just something that I've not experienced for a long time.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary what they did. So clever, so clever. The BBC, God bless them, in their times have made some funny decisions. But the way they handled Gavin and Stacey, right from its inception 10, 11 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, the way they handled it all the way through, it's just been like, it was always one of their special babies, and they've nurtured it right from the beginning, right through to Christmas. Amazing.
So I was going to say, you can probably predict my next question. You've probably been asked it quite a lot, but obviously we were left again in one of the biggest cliffhangers at the Christmas special, and it was almost like, when I watched that, I thought, this has got to be another series in this. They can't just leave it there. So do you think it will be back? Because it's left wide open with the ending there. Yeah,
well, I think, clearly there's no point writing it, there's no point writing it off when you've gone that far. You've got to leave it with a cliffhanger. But as to whether it will go on again, I mean, clearly it's not going to go on at the moment. But you never know. You never know. To me, it looks like it's all set to go again. Everything's ready to go, but you just don't know. You don't know what's going to go on. Sooner or later, I'm sure we'll find out.
But there's been no conversations as yet.
No, none at all. In fact, the only conversation I had with James after it had gone out, he said, God blimey, you spend 10 years telling people you don't know if there's going to be another Gavin and Stacey, and so you do another Gavin and Stacey, and off you go again. Is there going to be another? You can't get out of it. It's a cycle you're caught up in. There's never going to be enough.
So, well, what I wanted to do now is something a little bit different. We do it with some of our guests before. We've had Martin Clunes play it, along with other people, where we ask you some questions on your own career and see how many you can get right. There's only a few questions, but we get some mixed results. We get some people get 10 out of 10. We get others who get 1. So we're going to start off with, in what year did you appear in an episode of Taggart?
Oh, I remember where I lived in Taggart. I don't know. It must have been in the 90s sometime.
Do you want to take a guess?
Trying to get a clue. I'm usually not bad with years of doing things. 90.
Yes, it was 1999. How many episodes of The Bill did you star in?
Oh, blimey, no idea.
21.
There you go.
You starred as Max Wheaton in which TV series?
Max Wheaton?
Yeah.
No idea.
It was Silent Witness. Now, this next question is one of my favourite episodes that I've watched recently, but in what year did you appear in A Touch of Frost?
Blimey, no idea at all. I reckon, late 80s.
It was actually 95.
Oh, was it? There you go.
And I think you were in charge of a football club, Denton FC, if I remember correctly.
There was certainly a football club involved in it.
How many episodes of EastEnders did you star in?
I seem to think somewhere near about 150.
I'm going to give you that as 151. So yeah, we'll give you that, because that's played Tommy Sutherland in which series?
No idea.
Love and Marriage. What was the name of your character in New Tricks?
Blimey. No idea.
It was Ted. We only got 2 more, so don't worry. How many episodes of Gavin and Stacey did you appear in?
Well, I think we did 6 the first time, and then we did 1 and 6, and I don't know. Is it 14?
21.
How is it 21? Did we do 3 series?
3 series. Yeah, 21 episodes that there was a Gavin and Stacey. That's including this Christmas special.
Blimey.
And then lastly, where did Gavin and Stacey go on honeymoon?
No,
It was Greece. Do you know that's a new record? You got one, and that one was a sympathy point.
There you go.
Wow, Larry, I've always got to say it's a pleasure talking to you. I'm really grateful that you've given me your time today to actually go through your career and some of the things that you've experienced. And, you know, I really hope we get to see more of you on TV, that be it, hopefully another special Gavin and Stacey, but anything else that you're on is always a pleasure as well. And when we said that you're going to be on the show, we had some of your fans commenting who wanted to say hello to you, and one of them was called Lola.
Hello, Lola.
And Rich.
Hello, Rich.
And Natalie.
And Natalie. Lola, Rich and Natalie. There you go.
But they all absolutely love you. And a lot of people look at you as a bit of a sex symbol as well.
Yeah. Oh dear. As various members of my family might like to comment on that.
Do you enjoy that reputation?
Well, I might have done when I was younger. I'm a bit too old and realistic now to even relate to it with any element of seriousness.
Oh, no, honestly, thank you so much for giving me your time. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we get to chat again in the near future.
All the best of you, Lewis.
Thank you.